So, looking at the very first item from user flows and features, how can Nickson add images to a furniture items profile? Example, after a new item arrives at a warehouse and Nickson team builds it and takes picture. So essentially, we are talking when I hear builds, it's essentially assembling an item based on the parts that have been received, and then you're taking picture right at that moment once that assembly is done. So how do we and where do we add those? Okay, I'm going to go to the system now. So I'm logging into the system. And once I get into the system, I'm going to go to what we call here as a procurement order. Remember, that's the order that you're working with. I'm going to go to one of these orders here, and it might be under or intake order. Okay, sorry, intake order, my bad. And let's go to one of the items here and let's see if we have anything under assembly. I'm going to directly jump here. Okay, there you go. This is a perfect example. So what has been done here is this is an intake order that was generated, right, for a particular vendor. This is the vendor PO number, right? So remember, PO is always your procurement order. And I think for Praveen, if you don't mind noting down one thing, a procurement orders are PRO, POs are a project orders, so just make sure the abbreviation is correct here.
Okay.
All right, but back to it. So your intake orders are going to relate back to the procurement order from your vendor. So vendor PO, vendor ID show up, details of the vendor show up. Line items tell you what items you have requested for procurement, right? So in this case, 2 floor lamps. If I go to receive, it basically tells you the items that were received, right? Whether you received it as individual or if you received it in a pallet, pallet number would show up. Then now to a main question, assemble. So in this case, just as a dummy example, right? We basically have 2 items that have been assembled, right? Once assembled, they will have their own unique Nickson barcode. And from an image perspective, here what we're basically trying to do is if I click on any one of these icons here, the user in this case, and we just have uploaded dummy icons here, but essentially the user will have ability right after assembly. In this case, these items have been assembled, so right after assembly or right during assembly, I think, let me put it that way, you will have ability to add images. So in this case, I'm just gonna add just something dummy, right? So I added an image here, right? And you can add multiple different images right from here. And again, just random images, so just bear with me. But images can directly be added when you're building the item or at during receive or assembly task. Does that make sense?
Is this app available on mobile where they can take pictures directly from within the app?
So this screen is not. Essentially what has happened is we basically took our out-of-box version and we tweaked it for your needs, right? To your cater to your business. So our out-of-box is completely mobile responsive, but since we did customization on this, as per our solution overview, receiving is the only screen which would be available from a mobile perspective. Not that you cannot open this on a mobile device, you can use a tablet as well. So this would work exactly or better if you're using a tablet. But when it comes to a phone, and you're trying to receive items, receiving is the only task which would be 100% mobile responsive on a mobile phone. Everything else you can open on a tablet as well. So long story short, you can use tablets to do this. Mobile phones only for receiving. Make sense?
Okay.
No.
Just
Ashish.
Just to go ahead and just follow along what she's, sort of tagging on to what she's saying there. Let's say a guy's out in the field and a dresser's leg breaks, and I would like for him to attach a picture to that particular dresser's asset record, so to speak, where it's like, I want him to be able to, in that moment, note, using a picture, that particular that particular dresser has that particular damage. At this point, is he not able to scan it and add an image to that asset's particular collection of images?
No, and Praveen, correct me if I'm wrong here, but essentially the thought process here is at assembly task, you're adding images of the assembled product. Whether you want to capture damaged image, you can capture that as well, but going in to look at asset information, that is not a part of this particular deployment. Does that make sense?
I think I follow. Yep.
Ashish,
Yeah.
this whole piecemeal part, some pages are responsive, some pages are not responsive, was not what we agreed upon. The whole reverse Logix apps was supposed to be responsive. So what one thing, can you shrink your window size and just make it the width about a third of your current window?
All right, something like this. So, firstly, I want to say I'm basically, or the team is basically going off of the solution overview, right? On the solution overview, we just have receiving, and I remember clearly I mentioned that as well right at the beginning, that this cannot be mobile responsive, considering we are bringing customization. This is not an out-of-box version. So I want to just make sure that that is clear. And all the team is doing is going off of the solution overview, which clearly says receiving based on a mobile responsive screen, which is already available. In this case, actually, you know what? No, you can still use your phone, but all I'm saying is it will be responsive, but it won't be catered to that phone's size. Meaning, you won't be able to see the entire table if it has 10 columns, right? You won't be able to see all 10 columns in that small phone screen.
Don't mean to interrupt, but before we move on from 1 to 2, I was kind of curious. Let's say I had a particular asset that I have 100 of already in the system, already built, already out on the rack, and I want to add one very specific image to literally all 100 of those particular assets. How would I go about doing that in sort of a feasible, quick, efficient manner?
So when you add images, right, those images would basically be here, you're adding images against a single asset. So right now, if you're trying to add it to a single asset, it has to be on an asset by asset basis. It cannot happen at bulk. All right, so location scanning. Location scanning essentially available at put away. Basically, you're trying to store something away. So the way it would work is if you want to put one item or two items or by bulk, multiple items together or even pallets together, right? User simply needs to come in and basically select the items that they want to put away, or they can select even one item. All they need to do is when they get to this particular field, simply scan in your location code, right? So in this case, I don't have a location code here, but I'm going to use that search icon. Why? Because we will convert your existing inventory location structure into a graphical version. So if I click on search, it will show you the graphical version of it. So in this case, again, these guys have configured some test locations as well, but the thought process here is to mimic your existing location structure. And if I know now that there is a location code R1C1, so just from a scanning perspective, what the user will basically do is just simply scan in that location code. So the thought process here is they scan. As soon as they scan, and the system obviously is a scan and takes care of the enter functionality. In this case, since I don't have a scan, I had to press enter. But just a simple scan will associate location values to a particular item or multiple items at the same time. Does that make sense? So pretty straightforward, just a simple scan of the location code that will basically put one or more items into inventory.
We very much like to see it instead of you telling us how it will happen. We'd like for you to show us. And even though you guys are working from home, I would love for you to prepare for the next meeting to have like a scanner on your person to actually show us.
So that's what I'm saying, John, right? We don't have scanners at home. None of us at office, and we don't do physical handling of products, right? So we don't have a warehouse with scanners, right? And then any scanner that we use for testing purposes, those are at offices. And nobody is going to office, neither on the US side, neither on the India side. So that's why I mentioned if there is any scanning that needs to happen or you want to see that, we would have to leverage your facilities and your scanner to do that. And I can have the team on standby just in case of issues. But scanning should be pretty straightforward, just like what I showed you.
Okay. Let's just say, like, we're not even in sort of like the put away process or whatever. Let's just say we have a move out. We have furniture items in a particular customer's home. We bring those furniture items back. And let's just say at this point, if at any point somebody is just going to take an item and scan it and put it away, like what is the process there? Like they have the scanner. How do they go about just taking that item and putting it away? Like, what does that look like?
With me, is there a way? We might move to another question, but is there a way you can fill up this information just so I can show put away? And let me try and see if I can do it easily here. Just bear with me, guys. I'm just initiating a return order just to show you.
What number bullet point are you on?
So it's still item number 2, right? Location scanning. We want to see scanning that's happening once an item that has been moved out, right? What the process is going to be. In this case, I'm just saying random selections here. Click on save. All right, so my return is created. All right, so I have a return that's created. I'm going to come in and start working on this. So this is now an example of items being moved out from a customer's place, right? If a return's happening or the lease is ending, the system will basically be getting that signal from your systems and then creating a return. In this case, if you need to do something manually, I just showed you an example of how return can be manually created. Let's say for whatever reason there is an issue or the lease expires or there is some sort of an issue where the customer has to break the lease, right? And you have to intake those items in. You can simply go to your to create a returns order, which is just what I did, and then basically start the process. So now you have basically picked up those items and you're going to receive these items in your facility, right, before moving it away. So all the user is doing here is simply selecting the items that they're receiving, right? If they want to add images of those items, whatever their existing condition is, they can add it at an item by item basis. If you want to mark items as damaged, right? If let's say the lease chair is broken, one of the legs is broken, you can capture that here as well. Discrepancy, if there is any kind of shortages, right? Those shortages could be marked here as well. So if you haven't received a particular item, you can basically select multiple items and mark those as shortages. So Praveen, one of the feedback from my side here would be this discrepant or shortage drop down should be up top, just because we want to handle multiple items in bulk, right?
Yes.
But in this case, what I'm going to do is there are just 2 items that I plugged in here. If I want to add more items from the same leased set of items, I can add here as well. Again, just an example for demo, but you simply come in here, select the items, click on receive. You have received the items, meaning they have now entered your building, right, physically. The next stage would be to basically grade that particular item.
Ashish, can you go back to that received items? When we're marking whether something is damaged or not, we need to be able to also add text, add a note.
Correct, yeah.
Can
so
you,
I think
can you do
comments
that?
was disabled there, but comments is a field that will be available. Yes, 100%. All right, and Praveen, if you don't mind noting down those some of these points there.
Okay.
All right. So now at awaiting grade, you're basically grading these, inspecting these items, of course, and marking or tagging them with a grade. So in this case, I can select do bulk or individual selections. But either way, the thought process here is, okay, whether it needs repair, for a specific model, right? Whatever your return reasons is, some of these may be test as well, so just ignore those for now. But essentially what we are saying is, in this case, let's say needs repair, I'm just going to select a value so that I can move it ahead and actually show you the location scanning at put away. Again, it's the same piece, but how's that move out process going to happen, right? Right from receiving to grading, which is this particular stage, and then from grading it's going to move to awaiting put away. So you're basically restocking the item. Receive, grade, and put away, those are the three tasks from a move out perspective, from what happens when items are returned,
Ashish,
or you can basically move out a customer.
Ashish, I'm gonna jump in again. Can you reduce your screen size back to like a fourth? Because all this is gonna be done on a mobile device. This is what the real estate we're gonna be working with.
Sorry, you cut off there. Can you please repeat after real estate?
This is gonna be realistic for us. This is what the screen real estate we'll be working with.
Okay, this is the one. So again, I'm assuming it's a tablet you guys are using, right?
You're gonna be using phones and tablets.
Okay, so from a phone's perspective, again, like I said, receiving is fully optimized. You can use it. It's not that you cannot use the system, but the information that's presented, right? That presentation of the information obviously needs some work. As I said, out-of-box screens, those are configured already. But since we've tweaked this and added new configuration, new details to the screens, these can definitely work on a tablet, but phones, other than receiving, would be tricky just based on information that you will see. You can see the information, but may not be presented in the right fashion or right manner.
What would it take to get it presented in the right fashion? What would it take to make it look great on the phone? And is that possible?
So definitely possible. Like the picture perfect scenario is definitely possible, but those screens need to be designed from scratch, right? Why? Because the configuration, the details that have been added. So we need to make sure if you're showing 10 columns or if you're showing 15 fields, right? Those need to be properly spaced out as well. So the team would basically need to redesign these screens for a phone, as an example, a 5-inch or 6-inch, whatever it may be.
Is that possible?
All right.
So can we do that?
So that will be additional configuration going through our change request process. So yes, definitely you can do that,
Okay,
but that
can
would
you
have
follow
to
up
follow our
with us so we
change request process.
Can you follow up with us so we understand what it would take, what it would cost, how much time, etc.? It's very important.
Sure, no problem. I'll make a note of that.
And you can do the remainder of the demo on a smaller screen, so we can just see.
Sure. Just a second, just taking a note here. All right. Okay. So, all right, we wanted to do it on a smaller screen. So what were we doing here? We graded the item, we were going to put it away. Again, just like I said before, your put away would essentially work by selecting multiple items that you want to put away and then simply scanning in the location code. And not sure why I have this, but let's see. Okay. So in this case, just like before. So what I'm trying to point out here is the processes, whether it be in different orders, the tasks, whether it be in different orders, they work exactly the same. So there is standardization of these processes. So just like the put away you saw before on the intake order, it's going to work exactly the same on a returns order, which is what you're seeing right here. But user comes in, either they can scan the location code or they can simply plug in the location, select the location code rather. And if I click on
here scan location is not available now. Only you can select location in written module.
Okay. Okay, got it, got it. But eventually we'll have ability for user to scan as well, right? We want to separate these two.
Okay, okay. I will give it.
Yeah. So that needs to be consistent. So we need to make sure, just like before, you can scan or you can do the selection.
Okay.
Okay, now right here where we've got the two assets up on the screen, is that going to be two separate select and scan situations, or can you select all and then scan once to assign location to all of those at once?
So the latter. So you will definitely have that ability, as Praveen was trying to point out. There seems like there is some work on this particular piece to make sure those are activated. But eventually, you will have a situation where you can select all items, no matter how many, at the same time, and then basically have ability to scan in just once to put all those items away.
Okay.
Okay. All right. And in this case, just showing just an example on selection here, but everything remains the same. I click on save, and that basically saves that particular RMA. So put away has been done from a returns point of view. Okay.
Not to stay on this point, but I want to maybe even take an even simpler example. And I just want to know, because I'm having to just think about how this will affect people at sort of the lowest, most granular levels of what we're doing. Let's say I have one asset and it is just here in the warehouse, and I want to put it in a different location within the warehouse. And I just have a guy take it, put it there, and I want him to adjust the location and change it from there. What does that look like on that end? Where it's already been received, we've already put it away again, we're just moving it around. What does that look like from their perspective?
Right. So that we call it as inventory transfer. So essentially ability to move inventory. So in this case, if I go to transfer inventory, right, you can do it by asset tag, right, whatever your tag number is, or by location. If you want to move all items from one location to another, right, rack 1, shelf 5 to rack 5, shelf 1, as an example. Or if you want to move specific items, you can move that as well. Or if you just want to move pallets based on pallet numbers, you could do that as well. But in this case, let's say I'm going to see inventory location. And in this case, remember, we put in a lot of items in R1C1. I'm going to pick that, right? And I'm going to simply transfer. Again, all the user is doing, I don't have a scanner, so I'm typing in, but all the user is doing here is just saying, okay, from move all the items from this location to, for example, another location, which is R1C2, right? And again, please select at least one item. So just bear with me. Again, this screen, as I said, not responsive. So let me try to find out. Mostly, I got to search. Oops. Yeah, go ahead, Praveen. Sorry, I may be doing something wrong here. Praveen, I'm not able to hear you. Okay. All right. Let me try to find out. Okay, there you go. All right. So the thing that I was doing wrong here is essentially I needed to first select the location or scan in the location so that it shows me what items are available at that location. Now, from that location, if you want to move all items, you can do so as well. If you want to move some specific items, we can move that too. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move the items at the bottom, 1076 and 1082 to R1C2, right? So this is the location I've chosen, R1C2, and click on transfer. This now basically transfers these items to that location. What it means is now on R1C1, we just have two items here. If I look at R1C2, sorry, I have these two items that I've previously added, and there were already two items there. Does that make sense? So we call it inventory transfer, or transfer inventory in this case. But this is how you
they will have to access transfer inventory on their phone, come through this list, and then do all of that.
Yes. And like I said, it can be done on an asset tag if you want to move specific asset tags or items from a specific location or specific items or in general by pallet numbers.
When he says asset tag, does that mean you just scan the tag
So if you chose asset tag in that situation, they'd just in that instance be able to hit the little scan button, and then they would be able to scan that asset tag, and that would pull up that particular asset tag, and then you'd be able to transfer.
Right. And I'm just trying to look for these. So enter asset tag number. Okay, let me try to see. Okay, let's use this asset tag number. Since I have it right here, I'll simply come and scan that asset tag, right? As soon as I scan it, the system tells me that these are available at two places. One R1C2 and the second one R2C3. And now if you want to transfer quantity, you can transfer just one of it, since you have multiple quantities here. If you want to transfer everything, in this case, let's do everything. And I'm going to say, instead of R1C2, R2C3, let's move it to R3C. Okay? Same thing here. And okay, did that selection not go through? Okay. So another one. Praveen, do note that down as an issue. So I'm not able to select a location. Let's see R1C3. Okay. Oh, sorry, it's updated it. So Praveen, visually, one thing is missing, at least from a user perspective, is as soon as I select a location, it shows up here, but it doesn't show up here. So can you make sure it also shows up here? Because as a user, I'll think, hey, whatever I select also should show up here. Okay? But either ways, the thought process here is we have two locations. We search for an asset tag, saw that this tag exists at these two locations. I'm picking items from both these locations, 3 of those, and moving it to R3C3. Click on transfer, right? Now at R3C3, now if I search on this asset tag, which is by default, it goes to that particular search query. It is saying this asset tag only exists at R3C3, all 3 quantities. Make sense?
Yeah. Now, in terms of how we do this, we assign from a serialized standpoint. I guess I'm just curious. There's like a literal serialized barcode on these physical items. Is that like where in that drop down?
So right now, these were configured based on your existing requirements, right? Asset tag, location, name, pallet number, but we can easily add serial number as well. Essentially, what we call here as Nickson barcode, I believe.
Okay. All right. So you could make that one of the items, and then they'd be able to scan that, and then they'd assign that individual serialized asset to the new location.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
we would definitely want the barcode to be an option there, and then also model number. We don't use asset tag pretty much at all, just for your reference. So model number and barcode ID are the two fields that we use to identify product. So model number is the vendor's number that they give us, so that's how we identify generally what an item is, and then the barcode ID is how we identify a specific, say a specific couch, for example. But we don't use asset tag at all.
Okay. All right, making a note here.
Deja vu.
Yeah.
First.
Okay. All right. Any other points from a scan perspective, from an inventory perspective, location? All right. Assuming that's a no, moving on. So I showed you location scanning. As I said, bulk scanning. On the other side, we can have a joint session to go through that. Walk through steps for Nickson to initiate a return. So I basically went through that exact same step where I was able to plug in your project order number or the sales order number, whatever you want to call it, from your customer, right? The items that they leased on which order. Once I plugged that in, I was able to select items that they want to return, one or all of them, and then receive those, inspect those, and put those away. So we've essentially gone through step number 3. Anything else you want to see on or point number 3 here? All right, assuming that's a no. Number 4, take us through the process of adding a new item into a system during the building process. Again, building, from what we understand, is assembly. Both an item from a purchase order, right? So essentially, we looked at your intake order, and then I haven't shown you the processing on intake order, so I can go there to show you that. I've already showed you how adding back an item from returns work, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead to a purchase order and let's go through that flow. Okay. All right, and let's see if we already have some intake orders that we can work with. All right, so I have one intake order that's open. Let's work with this one. In this case, on our previous demos, unless you guys want to see it again, on our previous demos, what you guys saw was ability to create a procurement order, which in turn automatically creates an intake order. So for every procurement order, there'll be a default intake order that's created. Tomorrow, if you want to create a new intake order, right? And just to refresh everybody's memory here, from a procurement order perspective, you simply go in, click on add, just like you would do for other items as well. And then once you select a vendor, in this case, I'm selecting a random vendor, you will be able to search through their product catalog and basically keep on adding these items here, right? So that's how your procurement order would be created. Once your procurement order is created, a corresponding intake order, because our system doesn't allow any tasks under procurement order. Procurement order
Quick
is just
question on the
creation.
procurement order. Are you able to bulk upload a procurement order from like a CSV file rather than going and searching each individual item and typing the number?
Great question. I think John already also asked for this question. I think that's something that I need to check with the team. I was going to basically, when I get to that point, I was going to talk about that, but I need to check with the team on that particular aspect before I get back. So let me check on that.
Gotcha.
And let me make a quick note there.
Ashish, that was in the questions in the document we gave you.
Yes,
week.
yes, exactly.
So why don't we have an answer for that now?
So I first need to find out if we have that ability to begin with, right? So that's something that I need to find out. So what we have done here is whatever that out of box that has been pushed out. So again, I need to check with my product team to find out if that ability is even available in the product, right? So since I did not have an actual answer, proper answer, that's the reason why I haven't said anything so far. But once I check with the team, I should be able to get that answer out to you.
Yeah, what I'm saying is you should have already checked. Like, we sent this to you last week. You should have checked last week so that you could be prepared for today. That's the point.
Right, definitely. And I apologize for that. Again, it's something that the team is already busy with, so I did not want to get this one more thing on them. So that's on me. So I apologize for that, but I'll make sure you get that answer tomorrow. All right. Okay. So we were at intake order. So I'm going to directly go to intake order. Once your procurement is created, as I said, your corresponding intake order would be created. If you want to do a standalone intake order, you can do so as well by simply clicking on add here and adding an intake order. If you want to connect to a vendor PO, you can do that as well. Okay. I'm not going to go through creation, but let's work with your existing intake order. So I'm going to click on it. Now I have these two items that are in here, which you're procuring from this particular vendor. Now what happens when these items arrive, right? And this is, again, if I go back, just to walk you guys through the process of adding a new item into the system, right, from a purchase order.
Yeah, can you also shrink your screen on this so we can see how it looks?
Sure.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm gonna go to receive. Receive basically works the same way as receiving we did before. So if I click on this plus, now as and when I start receiving these items, those would populate here. So first thing, whether I'm using a pallet or not. In this case, if I say none, I click on receive. I basically say I'm not using a particular pallet, and I enter the quantity that I'm receiving, right? Since these did not do not have a barcode as yet, right? These are coming directly from your supplier. These do not have a barcode as yet. You're basically receiving based on quantity, not based on scanning a unique identifier. That will be generated during assembly. So in this case, I'm going to say, okay, I received all three quantities. Status changes. You have updates at the item level here on the three items that have been received. For the second one, let's say I want to put it in a pallet. So I'm going to say, hey, it's going to go in the new pallet. Once I say that, I'm going to simply put in the quantity here, 2, and go ahead and receive it. Once I receive it, if I now expand this particular item, it basically shows me the pallet number and the items within that particular pallet. So you can track at a pallet level as well. Okay. This was receiving items. Now, once I go to assembly, let's assume for the purpose of this demo, right, that these items can all be assembled here. So in this case, that item would show up. And then from an assembly standpoint, right, you're basically adding components to basically make up the product, right? So in this case, just for the purpose of the demo, I'm just going to put something random, part A, or A in this case. I'm going to use quantity as 1, right? Color, let's say blue. Click on save. You can add as many components as you want to. So part B, I'm using 2 of these, and those are silver as an example. Click on add. So essentially what you're trying to do is you're trying to assemble the product here by adding different parts. Okay. Now, once that's done, and I think Praveen, is there any, oh, you can add images as well. As I mentioned before, I'll just add one image for the purpose of the demo. And just bear with me as I'm using random images here. This image now basically is tied to this particular asset, for which we have already generated a unique identifier, which is the Nickson barcode. Issues with my browser, so it doesn't open up the barcode, but essentially what you'll have ability to do is open up the barcode, print it out as well, and then download if you want to. Praveen, is there anything else that I need to do here, or the first item is assembled and I can proceed?
Yeah, quick question. Now, that Nickson
Yes.
barcode right there, can we just decide what that is from this screen?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So when you say decide, right, I'm assuming you're talking about the schema itself, correct?
Yes, that's the serialized, like we have the physical barcode that we place on items. That is the serialization, and that, yes, that is what we've highlighted here, correct?
Right. So that serialization, we've requested for that before. You guys can send it even now as well, but that schema has to be finalized. Meaning right now we're just using whatever we use as a dummy number from an RL perspective, right? RL and a bunch of numbers. If you wanted to say something specific, you can let us know.
Okay. If I decided, never mind, I'm changing the barcode from X to Y, can I do that from this screen, or do I have to go elsewhere?
No. So you cannot change a barcode associated with a product. I mean, it's like, for us, it's like a serial number, right? Unless you're using one of our repair modules where serial numbers get updated, none of our modules allow unique identifier to be updated on the fly.
A lot of times someone will physically peel the sticker off of the back of one of our assets, and we basically just update what we have the serialized barcode listed as within our current system. So I was just wanting to see whether or not that sort of functionality existed here.
So for that, what you can do is you can basically go to this particular asset piece and you can just print out the label again. I mean, that's what we usually, that's how our customers use it.
Okay, now
you're generating a new number.
We said just print out the label again. Like we use custom-made hard aluminum barcodes that we affix to the items, and from time to time, if those physically are removed, then we'd want to replace it with a new one. But we would like to take that asset for record, where it has been, how many times it has gone out. And we would mainly just like to assign a new serial number to that so that whenever these guys scan this, they will know that it is this one that we are talking about. So at times we need to edit that to sort of give it that new barcode so that the electronic situation reflects the actual physical reality.
Okay. Okay, we got to think through that because all of our customers right now, they essentially print out a regular sticker label, right? And it can have a barcode on it. Never really had a customer who basically prints out aluminum tags or whatever metallic tags there are. So, and let me bring this to our product team's attention because that's something that's new to us as well. So let me try and figure out that.
Oh, good. Now, before we move on from this one, I'm just sort of curious, when you've got the part column over here and you're like adding parts to these things, like what is physically occurring? Like I'm just sort of trying to connect what you're doing electronically with what we are doing physically over here. Like what are we doing?
So from a simple example, right? Our thought process is, let's say you get a chair. You have 4 legs, a seat, and a backrest. So if you're assembling something like that, the ability for the user here is to basically say, okay, so I'm using chair legs as an example. I'm using 4 of those, right? And the color is red as an example. I'm basically saying, okay, now I added those legs. I'm trying to assemble the chair, right? So I'm basically saying I've added legs. Then I say I've added a seat and one of it and whatever the color is and save. So physically, you're basically saying what components or parts you used to assemble that product which is shown in this line. Does that make sense?
I think so. Now, how will these parts be relevant and referenced later on for our purposes?
So right now, it's just the ability to add those parts. If parts level tracking is needed, that is something that we need to add to the system.
Okay. So is this basically, let's take, for example, a coffee table. We have coffee tables that have glass tops. These glass tops are often removed and they can be stored elsewhere. Is this the sort of thing you're talking about where we've had a single serialized item that perhaps is made up of 2 component parts and we need to acquire both of those parts?
Correct. Yes.
While we're building these things, we're not like listing out the individual screws and bolts that we're using these, but we do have assets that are stored in separate pieces or bundles. So I'm just checking on
that. Right. So it's up to you, right, on what you need to add. Essentially, this parts module is or sub module is essentially derived from our repair solution or our repair product. And on the repair product side, these guys are tracking like 20,000 different parts across different devices, right? So it really depends. If you have a parts, since you guys don't have those many parts, and I suppose you won't have something called as a parts BOM, bill of material. If you do, our system is capable enough, of course the repair module is, not this module, but capable to basically absorb that into the system. And that way, what you can do is, when you do these assemblies moving forward, these parts would already be listed. So your assembler would know what parts need to be used to basically assemble this. And then tracking can also be done at that part level as well.
Okay, so let's go back to the coffee table example. Now, since the coffee table itself is a serialized asset, but the base of the coffee table and the top of the coffee table can theoretically exist in 2 separate spots within the warehouse, and they will be linked up and unified whenever it's time to actually physically pull that serialized asset.
Correct. But for that, we need to maintain a parts inventory as well. That's critical. Right now, we have a product inventory, not a parts inventory.
Okay, show us the example that BG just gave with the glass tabletop and the table frame. What does that look like in the current solution you've built for us?
So in the current solution, just like I added the seat and the legs, you would have to add that right here. We are not pulling anything from the product catalog because those are assembled and finished products, right? So right now, adding parts would basically be ad hoc from a user's perspective during this assemble task. If you had a parts inventory, right, just like a product catalog, if you had a parts catalog, then we would be able to pull parts from that particular piece saying, hey, you know what, these parts, if you're, let's say, for example, the coffee table, right? So what we would need to have is right now in the system, we have coffee table as a product. We'd need to have a parts inventory, which would say glass top, 4 legs as an example. Those are the parts that are tied to this coffee table. When you come in here to assemble, you'll simply have that top and the legs as listed, and all you'll be doing is, okay, I use the leg, I use that particular top, and I just assembled it. So if we have that connection, then you'll be able to absorb it. Current situation, you would have to enter what parts you are using to assemble this product. Just like what I did right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so the use case is we assemble it and then, but we store it separately. So can you show us what that would look like? So in this example, the seats and the legs are not like stored in the same place.
Okay, so the seats and legs, we are not even tracking them. So I just want to be clear, we are not even tracking them. Users are just adding it here so that the system knows what items were used to create or assemble that particular product, right? And then when you go to put away, you're going to put away the entire assembled product. So you see these parts are added more from an informational purposes. There is no parts tracking involved here. There is no bill of material that is tied to this piece.
How do we do that now?
So your inventory is just finished goods and assembled products, not parts.
So whenever the time comes for someone to go acquire the example coffee table that it has 2 pieces, how will they be provided the information necessary to know that they need to acquire the base of the coffee table and the top of the coffee table?
Right. So for that, we would need your parts BOM, bill of material, and we need to track your parts inventory as well, not just product inventory. So we would have to add those 2 submodules here.
But he also wants to play.
That, as I said, is a part of our repair solution. It's not even a part of this returns product that we modified for your needs.